Good morning for everybody on the West Coast and good afternoon for folks on the East Coast. We're going to be kicking off our Mapistry webinar today. Really excited to bring to you one of our newest products around environmental risk and compliance indicator scores, or MERCI scores, for facilities. This is something we've talked about for a long time, looking at how do we score facilities in environmental compliance and really develop a scorecard. So it's something we are launching now and wanted to share a little bit more some of the thinking behind it. Couple housekeeping things before we get started. We are recording this, and we will send out a copy of the recording of this and also a copy of the slides and also some follow-up information. We wrote a blog post about this last week that Courtney, who's on the webinar with me today, put together. So we'll publish that and send you copies of that, but also just information if you're not a Mapistry customer, how you can get access to this as part of a starter kit that we've put together to really get people jumped into getting compliance scores for their facilities. So we'll send out a bunch of follow-up info. The other housekeeping item is if you have questions, feel free to submit them through the chat and we'll try to address them, or we'll just follow up via email if it's better addressed via email. So with that, I'm going to jump in. The goal for why we developed these MERCI scores is really to be able to proactively identify compliance gaps and focus resources. As all of you know, resources, both time, money, can be pretty limited, especially in the environmental teams. So we want to be able to focus those as best as possible. So part of what this toolkit is some analytics tools to allow you to allocate resources better. So I'm Ryan Janik. I'm one of the co-founders of Mapistry. We've got a mix of like people new to Mapistry on the webinar today and customers that are interested about accessing this for their facilities. I'm also joined by Courtney. Courtney's our senior sales engineer and really is going to speak to how these analytical tools can work for you and how you can really pull some very unique insights out of your program by using Mapistry and digital tools and then applying it through the scorecards, but also being able to dive into some specific like inspection result information that really is only possible at a scalable level by using digital tools and mobile apps for inspections. So really excited to have Courtney here on here too as our technical expert, and really going to dive into that in a bit. So one of the goals of Mapistry is we want to enable industrial companies, manufacturing companies, transportation companies to complete compliance requirements, be able to track it, analyze it, and then ensure. And today's focus is really on the second part of analyze and ensure. We're going to talk a little bit about the like how to do it and track it, because that's the underlying components to this. But really the focus around scorecards and the MERCI scores is around analyzing and ultimately ensuring environmental compliance and being able to do that proactively. So the topics we're going to cover today is one, shifting from lagging indicators to leading indicators, some of the challenges with annual audits, how to look at real-time risk indicators, and then how to leverage what you're doing in environmental for operations and maintenance, and really leverage that data of like you're doing compliance inspections, but how do we use that elsewhere within our organization? And then a getting started or a quick start guide to how do you enable these scorecards today for your facilities. So one of the things is you hear a lot about like leading indicators, lagging indicators. Everybody knows leading indicators are the proactive indicators. Those should help us reduce risk, and those risks could be fines, it could be penalties, it could be lawsuits. On the safety side, those could be injuries, incidents. The goal is by focusing on leading indicators such as on-time inspections, the fact that facility personnel are finding corrective actions and then closing them out quickly, is you're going to reduce the cost ultimately with any kind of problems. So one example would be a leading indicator could be I'm doing my SPCC inspections on time every single month, and I'm also finding corrective actions as part of that and then quickly closing them out, because those are great leading indicators for my SPCC program. Whereas what we don't want is lagging indicators for SPCC. That could be a spill report, it could be an actual discharge, it could be for the air side, it could be exceeding air emissions because a baghouse wasn't maintained properly, wasn't inspected, and then starts dusting. So you're exceeding your air emissions limits, which would be the lagging indicator. So what we want to focus on is these leading indicators and make those changes before we get into the lagging indicators and have even bigger problems. So one of the things we did is we took a poll on LinkedIn, and we've done this a couple of times now, and I think it's helpful to gather kind of from a wider EHS or environmental community of, what is on people's minds, what's most interesting, valuable to them. So we asked, what are the leading indicators of environmental performance that you wish you had more visibility into? So the way this question is worded, it could be, it's not what is the best leading indicator, it's where do you think you don't have visibility today but want more visibility? So one of the things was identifying corrective actions, and this is a really tough one. We had Erica Guerra, Martin Marietta on back in 2022, talking about back to basics for inspection programs and environmental programs. This is a really big thing. Is step one is getting people to do an inspection. Step two is actually find issues and close them out as part of that inspection process. And that identifying corrective actions is a really great indicator of a healthy environmental program, because we all know about pencil whipping, and like on paper, that's so easy to do. Just go down and check, everything's fine on an inspection. So if we can identify corrective actions or the absence of corrective actions, that can be a really great leading indicator. And that's what a larger group of the EHS and environmental community said too, is like, how do I identify where we're finding corrective actions? So number one on our list of leading indicators to watch is that identification of corrective actions. Because if we look at the data and we see facilities and a subset of them have no corrective actions identified, that's an opportunity to do additional staff training of, one, what is a corrective action or a finding that you might want to log as part of an inspection, or even ad hoc, just walking around a facility or a yard. But why it's not bad, because I think there's a connotation that if you find a corrective action, it's bad. So sometimes facility staff don't want to log a corrective action because they think it's a bad part of the process. It's a negative on their program. They want all good check marks across their inspection forms. Where I think there's a great opportunity from a training and coaching perspective is that is actually a problem, because as we all know, all of you have been on industrial facilities. How many times is an industrial facility perfect when you walk out there? Almost never. I mean, every time I ask people this, they say, no, never is it perfect. There's always something that can be improved and fixed. So teaching staff around that for inspections, that finding a corrective action is not a negative indicator. It's actually a positive indicator of a healthy environmental program. So we can use that data to identify where we might have healthy or unhealthy environmental programs. The other leading indicator to look at is, what is the backlog for corrective action? So if we can find corrective actions, but are we actually closing them out? Because that looks at operational priorities, resources. Sometimes it's a place for environmental to advocate for additional resources for operations to fix things if we see that backlog growing. So that's a really good leading indicator. You want to fix, leaking valves, leaking secondary containment before it becomes an issue. The third leading indicator to watch is just on-time inspection completion. If you're paying attention to this, and this is at the forefront of staff's minds, that's a great leading indicator of they understand what they need to do, they understand the regulatory framework they're operating under, and they're getting it done on time. It's a very simple one, but it's actually a very strong leading indicator that people are taking the regulations, their permits to operate seriously, they understand them, and they're getting it done. So understand, take it seriously, and actually complete it and track it. So one of the typical approaches, when we look at compliance programs under kind of the old way of doing things is we're going to do an annual audit, maybe a biennial audit. That requires somebody to travel to a site, say, hey, let me see all your inspections for the past year, pull out the binder. We've heard stories of people saying, well, they get to the site personnel is like, hold on, sit here for a minute, I got to go find them. an hour later, they come back with all the inspections neatly stacked up. It looks like they had just been printed out and check. That creates obviously a big compliance risk there. But that document review, facility review, often a site walk, post-audit meeting, the auditor compiles findings, ranks the findings facility to facility, then shares them with those facilities and others, and then actually takes action and starts the process of taking action. This is a single snapshot in time over many months. The fact of like the time spent going out there, collecting the documentation, this is a very costly process, especially if we're trying to mitigate risks ultimately and prevent like penalties, lawsuits, fines, spills to the environment. This is a very inefficient process to environmental compliance. So one of the things that, and Courtney and I were talking about this, and Courtney's done a bunch of these audits throughout the country for companies similar to yours. And her comment was, this is just a single snapshot. This is, facility has time to prepare. They can run to the back room, fill out the forms, fill in the gaps. Maybe they do it a couple days beforehand. It doesn't represent what's happening every week, every month, kind of consistently. And it's often too late. Like there's just too much of a time lag. Yes, you go through, you check the box. Yes, they're in compliance with X, Y, and Z. It's nice to have, but it's just a single snapshot, and there's too much ability to kind of game the system around audits if the ultimate goal is stay in compliance, prevent pollution, don't have incidents. And the problem with that is, like, one of the things is all this data is siloed. Under the conventional method, that data sits at a facility level, and time for the facility to actually do stuff, but even time for an auditor to go there, it's probably only once a year, once every other year, because of those resource constraints. And it's a bunch of time to actually do the audit. But at the same time, non-compliance can be very, very costly. You get caught in between your audits, the paperwork's not done. We've seen more of this, of like EPA doing multi-state or multi-regional, like just paperwork violations of send me all your SPCC inspection forms for this time period from these facilities, and then there's data gaps that become a problem. So non-compliance, it continues to be costly, and as we see with like penalty amounts rising year after year, that continues to be something that companies are thinking about. So obviously we're biased. Both Courtney and I came from the old way of doing things on paper and in Excel. We're at Mapistry here because we believe that digital tools can solve a lot of the challenges we saw in our own work. So this is something from like personal experience of seeing like those data gaps, the pencil whipping, the lack of insights. Our goal at Mapistry is to take an entire environmental compliance program and get it into one place, so that you can see trends, spot problems in real time. So you're still doing the same work to some extent, but you're doing it more efficiently, which is a savings on operations and plant time, but you're getting 10x the insights and the ability to look at leading indicators and proactive. It's one of the reasons why this is so cool from a scorecard thing, is it takes all these like digital efficiencies, mobile apps, and reveals so much about facilities through scoring and matrix. And then as you'll see, we apply like outside third-party data from like what states are inspecting frequently, what's the violation amounts, what's my financial risk that we'll get into. But our goal is digitize everything, get it all in one platform, so your entire environmental program can be there, and you can start drawing those connections between the different pieces. So one of the big moves we see from folks is, and one of our goals with this is not waiting to that annual audit to spot problems. Like we want to know about them in real time. So the goal with this is you get automatic scoring, and you can set thresholds based on leading indicators, and you can do a lot more auditing from desktop, but even your couch or your laptop, to spot check facility performance in real time and understand how one facility is doing against another. And we see the value in that because facilities and plant managers and folks on the ground that are responsible for environmental can be very competitive. They want to know how each other's doing. So you can not only audit, but you can also inform those facilities how they rank against their peers. And for leadership, that can be very insightful of like, how is this region doing? Or how is this specific plant manager doing? If they're at the top of the entire organization, we've seen that even as a promotion pathway. So a lot of efficiencies from an auditing perspective, but also it's just you're on top of it in real time. So one of the questions, you know, to think about as you look at your program is your facility in an enforcement hotspot? Because none of this would really matter if there's no enforcement, nobody cares, nobody ever shows up on your site, nobody ever asks for like compliance records. But something to think about, this is a heat map of EPA penalties in the past 5 years. So thinking about where your facilities are located. We've also seen if you have facilities in like multiple states or multiple jurisdictions, we've seen much more where regulatory agencies will inspect in one state, and if they find a problem, they'll refer it up to the federal level and they'll do a multi-state enforcement. We've seen that with EPA pulling together multiple regions. 2 coffee and compliances ago, we talked about that from a waste, where they nailed somebody for waste violations in Arkansas and turned it into a big multi-state enforcement. But that was a referral from the state agency on up to the federal level. So what did we develop? And we're going to dive into the product piece a little bit more. So the Mapistry environmental risk and compliance indicator scores takes a bunch of those leading indicators we just talked about and applies the enforcement trends in an algorithm that we developed to give you a score for every single one of your facilities. So it takes all the kind of key leading indicators that we think are really important at core compliance. So on-time inspection rates, identifying corrective actions, but also overdue, so that time lag on corrective actions, and then looks at something that could be leading indicators, but probably more leading to lagging indicators like spill reports, agency visits. So it collects all of those in leading indicator scores, but it also applies what are the state enforcement and trends. So what's the likelihood of I'm going to be caught if I'm not, you know, a high risk facility to be caught? That's going to score lower. The same thing it looks at is the penalty size for that geographic location. If I'm caught, how bad is it going to be? Obviously, a higher penalty amount is a lot worse. So it combines all of these into a single score for a facility from 0 to 100. So we've got an outside proprietary data set we put together around state enforcement trends, geographic information, financial risks, and combine it with the data that's coming through on your facilities to give you a score for your facility. So the other thing we've got is with the leading indicators, one of the things that we'll show you is you'll be able to dive into like what's driving it. So I broke out like the different components of the score itself. But one of the things we can reveal in these analytical dashboards is what's the big factor that Courtney will share with you. It's like, how do you like derive like improvements in your organization? Where do you focus those resources? Is it inspection completion rate, or is it identifying corrective action? So one of the things is not only knowing, hey, you've got a problem at these facilities, but what's driving that? What are the changes that you can make to actually have change? So with that, I'm going to flip it over to Courtney.
Okay, thanks, Ryan. Let me share my screen. Here we go. Okay, so I'm excited to be sharing our new dashboards with you guys. So those of you familiar with Mapistry, we're in the analytics area. You know, our standard dashboards are inspections and tasks. There's also the site area would be where your facilities are filling out their inspections. So we're going to hang out here on the analytics dashboard. This first one is that MERCI score that Ryan talked about. And I look at this dashboard, and as Ryan mentioned, a former compliance auditor, I just remember how much time it would take to put together something similar like this for my client. So, maybe I had to travel to the site and get the binders. A lot of my clients by the end had gone to digital inspections, but that still involved me clicking into each inspection, hunting, reading each inspection for corrective action, sometimes having a separate calendar so that I could tell if the inspections were being done at the required frequency. And that's still a lot of manual effort for something that seemed like it was digitized. So here's my snapshot for today of my facilities. I can log in at any time and just see where do I want to focus today? And it pops right up to the top for me. I can see that my Temple, Georgia facility is doing the worst out of all my facilities. So I know I'm going to want to focus on that site first. I can come down to the bottom of my screen. So this is your score, overall score for your facility. Like Ryan mentioned, it's 0 would be ideal, 100 is really problematic. So he's sitting at 60, but I can come down here and see kind of what's going into that score. 3 corrective actions. I like this. I like that he is seeing things at his site. 15% past due inspections, that's not great. That can definitely be improved. I can also compare him to my company averages up here. So I can see that 15% is more, as a company, we're trending at 11%. So 15, he's not doing great. 100% past due tasks. Now this is the problem. So we were, thumbs up, great that he's identifying issues. 3 in the past 90 days is good. Tells me that he's looking for things. 100% past due inspections. I'm concerned now that maybe he doesn't feel empowered to get things done. But I want to have a meeting with him. I want to talk to him about what is going on. Why can't we close out corrective actions? 2 spill reports. That's also a little different than the rest of the facilities. 2 spill reports is also a little concerning. So we'll talk to him about that too. And then he's also had an agency visit. So going in and seeing what the results of that agency visit is something I want to do maybe even before I talk to him. So I have access to all these documents. I can review them before I talk to him. For those of you familiar with Mapistry, the way our permissions work is as a manager, I can see, as like an area manager or an organizational manager, I can see all of the facilities, but my team at Georgia is only going to see their facility. So they know they're sitting at 60, but they might not know how that compares to everybody. So what I can do before my meeting with him is I can come up in here to my delivery option, and I can send him just a snapshot of this whole dashboard so that he can see how he compares to the rest of the facilities. So I can use the just send now option, put in his email address, be able to send it to him, and then I can add a message to this and say, hey, I want to talk to you about your past due inspections and those spill reports. And so I can send him, this will send a PDF snapshot of the entire dashboard so that he'll have some understanding of how he compares to the other facilities and knows why we're focused on his facility today. So what I've done is we are now looking at real-time data. So as things get, after this conversation, we can get some resources deployed. He'll get his corrective actions fixed. He'll get his inspections caught up, and hopefully he bumps down to the bottom of my list. So I'm able to take this action immediately. I'm able to see immediately what's going into this, and I'm leveraging all of that digitized information so that I'm not having to manually go in and read forms or figure out if they're being done at the correct frequency. So that's the MERCI scores dashboard. That's how I would use it. And we're going to talk about a couple other dashboards that are now part of this overall like risk toolkit. So we think about dashboards, we think about program level, facility level, asset level. So, we kind of jumped in the middle here. This is like our facility level, we're seeing which facilities are performing well, which facilities aren't performing well. So we have our facility information. I'm going to click over to environmental summary, which is going to be my program level information. So this dashboard is going to be great for reporting out to leadership. This is my program level view. I'm looking at the past 365 days. And what I can see here as this fills in is those key metrics that I'm tracking as a program. I see inspection status. I see corrective action status. I can see for the past year, we've had a problem with corrective actions. They've been consistently late, and we still have a lot of past due corrective actions. I've also got access to water exceedances, air exceedances, agency visits, and enforcements. And these are interactive. I can click on my water exceedances. It's going to tell me which facilities, which pollutants, so which facilities and which pollutants are having problems. This dashboard, like the facility one, is something, I can leverage the delivery option for. I can send it to leadership on a regular frequency. Those people don't have to have Mapistry accounts. They never have to log into Mapistry. They can get one of these just sent to their desk, to their email at a set frequency. I can also download the data or download the image. So if I want to put this in my own PowerPoint deck that I'm required to present, I can take these images and just copy and paste them into there. So our goal is to really save you time in reporting, as well as pull that information that you're collecting digitally, break down those silos, get it all in an easy to access centralized location. That's the purpose of the environmental summary dashboard. And then the last one I want to show you, so we thought program level, facility level, asset level. So Ryan mentioned, this desire to take that hard work that the environmental team is doing and get it in front of operations so that we can start to make changes. So we have our inspection results dashboard, and that's going to do just that. It's going to pull out those corrective actions that are being identified on your forms and the responses to your forms, and it's going to put them into a usable format for you guys. So we'll jump into SPCC results here.
Yeah, and one of the cool things is categorizing what is being found to understand a little bit more about your program that Courtney will go into. It's not just a numeric, like you had 5 problems. There's deeper level insights that we can actually reveal from these.
Yeah, so like Ryan said, we're looking beyond, top level is just, are there past due inspections? So do I have a full data set? Are there past due inspections? Are there past due corrective actions? So kind of top level, right now we're looking at SPCC results. So top level, one, I don't have a complete data set. So I want to make sure those facilities get their inspections completed. And then we come down here and we see from different questions, how many times questions were answered that there was a problem associated with that element. So we're seeing tank condition problems across the board, and some other conditions at Spokane. They've had 2 of the same issue over here. And then we can come down to our corrective action list. I can also see here that Albuquerque has had reoccurring issues with tank A. So we can start to, so what we're doing here is all of that information that was hidden in environmental's inspection report, and then probably emailed out along with all the other emails and email overload that operations is dealing with. We're taking that and we're summarizing it for them. So again, the way permissions work, if you're connected to just one site, you would see your site, but you would be able, again, to share this information out with operations and start to discuss the resource allocation to make sure that issues are being addressed and that we're eliminating reoccurring issues from happening. Those are the dashboards. There's similar ones for stormwater and your hazardous waste area inspections, chemical inspections. I'll jump back to the MERCI dashboard real quick.
Courtney, can you show how some of the data gets in from the facility level?
Yeah, so we'll go over. So the data comes in. Each site has their own site level dashboard. The site level dashboard is going to show them their tasks. So what inspections are upcoming, and then if there's corrective actions, if any of those are overdue, that's going to show up here as well. And your facilities are also getting regular email reminders about upcoming inspections, corrective actions, and past due inspections and corrective actions. Each program element that's being tracked is on its own set frequency with its own specific, with its own form that is populated with the site specific information. So I'm just jumping into my SPCC form for this site. So this site has one tank at it, tank A. So each facility is going to have their own specific assets added to their inspections. Makes everything very site specific, and they can do these inspections on their mobile phone as well. So you can do the inspection while you're in the field and take your pictures and add your corrective actions. One great thing is you can close out your corrective action like while you're doing the inspection too. So if you see something, you add it, you're able to fix it, you can track that all in the same workflow. So if I'm doing my inspection, I can add my corrective action here, and then I can close it out if I'm able to fix it while I'm doing my inspection. So we want to eliminate that barrier to tracking corrective action. So this is a very streamlined workflow. And then again, it all bubbles up to those dashboards, so I don't have to open every form to see where the problems were. The problems are being brought right to my attention in our dashboards. So, is there anything else, Ryan, you'd like me to highlight while we're here?
Yeah, there's a question about the environmental summary. You showed the water exceedances piece. How does that data get in?
Oh, sure.
Is that something that has to be manually entered? How is that all collected for like a water exceedance?
So the water exceedances, let me go to back to my site level dashboard. So the water exceedances, we have our lab uploader tool. So that's over here in our record section. And the lab uploader tool is really cool because you don't have to have a template for it. So your lab results, you get those back in your CSV format, your EDD format, and you will upload the lab report, and it becomes just a drag and drop. And so I drag and drop the file here. It's going to use our proprietary matching technology to match the fields from your lab report to the database. So again, no template required, and you would do the matching and the data gets uploaded that way. So it takes, all of 10 seconds usually to get a lab file into Mapistry. So no manual data entry, no opportunities to transpose numbers, and it's going to check it for you on the way in. It's going to look for duplicate data. It's going to make sure that it's going to look for duplicate data as well as any analytes or locations that aren't part of your data set. So it's going to do some checking for you on the way in as well, and then you'll get emails right away of any exceedances.
One of the big things, all these cool analytics only work if we can make it really easy to get the data in, as Courtney was saying, using a mobile line, online, offline, whatever it takes to get that inspection and task and corrective action data in. But the same applies, people will integrate in with our API to pull air emissions data automatically. The same with the lab report. We want to make it as easy as possible to get all this data in. And those MERCI scores and the environmental summary are really the end result of making it really easy to get data in. I don't, for anybody on the webinar today that's like tried implementing software and getting people to adopt it, if you don't get people using it at a site level and getting the data in, like we can have the fanciest analytics tools out there, but they're worthless if, like Courtney showed you how many inspections overdue. If it's all overdue and nobody put their data in, like we don't get those proactive insights. So one of the big factors for us is how do we reduce that barrier to use?
Okay, Brian, I'm going to pass it back to you. I'm going to stop sharing.
Yeah, let me.
Yeah, Ryan's pulling the presentation back up, but like I said at the beginning, it used to take me a lot of time to pull these findings together for facilities. I mean, on top of the site travel, even the documentation review, if it was digital documentation, but not already synthesized or aggregated, that could take up to 2 hours just to go through 90 days worth of inspection data. So we're just saving, trying to save a ton of time and move this into real time so that you're not sitting on an issue. You're not sitting exposed waiting for somebody to identify the issue before you do.
Yeah, we did another conference presentation with one of our customers on this around just what you said, Courtney, the document review, and switching from the old way of doing things to just digitizing this one step in Mapistry cut that audit time by a third, because they were able to eliminate that document review, document collection by doing it digitally in real time before they even left for the site. So even just making one step is already cutting 3-4 hours per facility out of the process. And that's on top of like the efficiencies about 50% faster just on a monthly basis of getting inspections done for the facility themselves. So with this, it really transforms this entire process, around not only document review, but all those meetings and findings compilations, because it turns into something from you can identify a high risk site in real time and you've already got all that, you just skip the step of document aggregation, and then you can skip the step of even going out to a site. Or if you do decide to go out to a site, you can spend the time focused on like training and fixing problems rather than digging through documents and aggregating them. So it really streamlines this entire process. On a single site, like just the audit process, it's anywhere from 8 to 12 hours time savings just on that one person doing it, but that on the auditor side. But even on the facility side, it's going to cut a couple hours of their time just on that one audit. And that's not counting everything else from an operational efficiency of just running a compliance program. And then the biggest factor is really the risk mitigation side. So Courtney, you want to explain a little bit about how we've packaged the starter kit together and why we included this?
Sure. So the dashboards I showed you today are all what's considered part of the MERCI Starter Kit. They're based on our standard forms. So you get if you're using Mapistry already, you're already doing your inspections in Mapistry, you're already tracking your corrective actions in Mapistry, you're ready to start using the scorecard. We can turn on the agency visits form and make sure you have all the forms that are going into the scorecard, and then the inspection details one similar, so that what inspections you're already conducting in Mapistry, we can turn on their corresponding details dashboard and start pulling, getting that information again into a format that's going to be, really usable by your teams and save you the time of, emailing out issues or flipping through the forms to find issues. So we packaged it all together because it all works together. And again, we want to think about that, the program, facility, asset type, and make sure we're covering all three of those and giving you the information you need.
Yeah, and one of the great things about using, we have abilities to customize forms, but one of the things is if you want to get quick time to value and get started with it right away, is using standard inspections allows you to extract down to what is the most problematic, like stormwater BMP area that we consistently have issues with. Using standardized forms helps with that. We can certainly go to more custom forms, but if you're balancing the risks, the trade-offs in your program between get started very, very quickly with a program that's going to give you really deep insights versus customizing forms to maybe what you want from a corporate policy, those are both trade-offs that like our customer success team can talk through with you. What are the trade-offs to both? And think about how can you incorporate maybe your custom forms into this kit. But this kit for facilities that just want to hit the ground running and say, I want to go today and get this laid out very quickly and iterate off of that, this enables them to do that. So one of the things I want to highlight, we went over it on Courtney's demo a little bit, is, it's not just facility scorecards and risk scoring, but it's taking it a step further. As Courtney was saying, it's digging down into asset level and extracting every response that you have for an inspection, a corrective action, and understanding where are the repeat issues and where are the biggest problem areas. And I think this is a nuance that gets lost, especially if you're switching from paper to digital, but even using other digital tools, is thinking about, if I'm going through all these inspections, how am I using that data? Am I understanding at my Albuquerque, New Mexico site on tank A, it consistently has like a piping issue come up twice in the past 12 months. That allows me to really focus my efforts on why, not only Albuquerque of having issues, but like tank A specifically. And that's where that second bullet point, where environmental data becomes really operation focused information, is that's really valuable information that you can leverage and show value as like a business partner at the environmental EHS team to other departments within your organization, of saying, we're doing this normally, our monthly SBCC inspections, but we found this kind of leading indicator that tank A may have other issues. And you can, use that for operations, for maintenance, and really prioritize resources. So it's not just, we're going to do tank upgrades across all our operations. We can strategically go in and find the tanks that are most likely to cause us problems in the future. So one of the things we wanted to put in there is that second part of being able to extract inspection level details, because that becomes so valuable at an asset level. So quick reminder, if you've got questions on this, feel free to submit them through the chat. We can try to answer them now. Otherwise, feel free to shoot either Courtney or myself an email, Courtney at Mapistry, Ryan at mapistry.com. You can also send it to info@Mapistry if you've got follow-up questions or something comes to mind, but feel free to submit them through the chat. But wanted to summarize, we talked a little bit about leading indicators, especially like identifying corrective actions. That was the #1 thing in the poll of the EHS community, and we think it's a very strong indicator. Inspection completion status, and then that time to complete corrective actions, all really key leading indicators. One of the things we talked about too was with annual audits is you get this like month-long time lag, and it's a single snapshot in time. You're not getting it real time. Facilities have time to prepare, and the follow-up can take a while with those findings. You want to address it much quicker and much more in the moment of when you start seeing those risk indicators. So having real-time risk indicators kind of like sound the alarm that, hey, we don't have a problem yet, because we don't want the NOV or the air exceedance or water exceedance or spill report. We want to trip those indicators before they get to that point. So having that in real time so we can actually get out there and address it. And then we just talked about it, but understanding that all the stuff that we're doing in environmental can actually be leveraged for operations, for maintenance, for other people. And it's a great way to show value to other departments as a business partner. It's not only compliance with permits to operate, but it's taking all that we're doing for environmental and leveraging it in other parts of the business. So I hope you all found this really informative. Feel free to shoot us an email or drop a question in if you have additional questions on how it works, how you can use it on your facilities if you're already a Mapistry customer, or if you're interested in learning more about Mapistry and the software platform. We're both happy to share more about that. So we'll send a follow-up email with the recording, the slides, the blog post Courtney put together, and some more details about the MERCI Starter Kit. Courtney, any final thoughts before we wrap up today?
No, I think, like you said, if reach out to us and we can talk to you about how to get started with all this and save you guys a lot of time and energy on putting this information together.
Yeah, and if you've got questions on like how the process works, what types of information can go into it, Courtney's a great resource for that, of like digging into your environmental program on a technical level, and offering some suggestions on where you can drive some of the most value by using software tools like Mapistry to drive these risk scores and facility scorecards. So feel free to reach out if you want to chat and dive into your program specifics a little bit more. All right, with that, thank you very much for jumping on today, and we'll follow up with some more information, but feel free to reach out if you have any other questions. Thanks.